Here on the Motoring Chronicle, we like going through some of the most popular questions on the internet that are being asked about the world of motoring. And one that I've seen recently, probably in response to a lot of concerning news coming out of the UK when it comes to our car manufacturing industry, is if the car manufacturing industry in the UK is in trouble, if it's at real danger of basically being wiped out. That's a lot of people. What's what a lot of people are asking at the end of the day. There's a lot of concerns when it comes to that, and they're not unfounded at the end of the day. There's a lot of troubling things going on right now in the UK, but I just want to dispel a rumor, a myth really, when it comes to industry in the UK, because I've said this on a number of occasions. People generally think that oh, the days of British manufacturing are over, we don't make anything in this country anymore, and that's just not true. We make a lot of stuff. And there's an interesting graphic here from 2023 from the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, SMMT, there we go. And that kind of goes over very much in terms of how much of an industry the car manufacturing industry is in the UK, because it's not just about British companies, British brands, but it's also a lot of foreign brands as well that do actually do a lot of their work in the UK when it comes to the European market. And I'll just explain what I mean by that just here now. So according to this, the SMMT's stats, the automotive related manufacturing contributed around £93 billion of turnover in 2023 and £22 billion of value added to the UK economy as a whole. And they also invest around £4 billion each year in research and development, R&D, which just helps things in the long term, really. So it's a big research place when it comes to automotive innovations and technologies, is the United Kingdom. There's around almost 200,000 people that are involved in the manufacturing. And then in total, when it comes to automotive manufacturing as a whole, everybody to do with these car companies, you've got over 800,000 people. That is a huge percentage of the workforce. I'd wager that's one of the highest things in the UK. I think the highest is the NHS, the National Health Service, unsurprisingly. But when it comes to heavy industry, or at least in any kind of industry like that, the car sector is huge. And this is actually huge for jobs outside of London. A lot of people say there's too many jobs in London and not enough in the rest of the UK. But the automotive sector, for the most part, is actually based outside of London. There's some huge plants in the northeast, the northwest, the Midlands, South Wales, even up into Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. There's some huge sites. And when it comes to the overall exports, not just cars being made in the UK for UK buyers, but around 12% of total exports of goods from the UK actually come from the automotive sector, and those goes to around 140 countries in total. I will put this graphic on the screen while I'm talking about it, by the way, because it's really interesting and it does really shatter some of the misconceptions when it comes to the automotive sector, in my opinion. And in total, that's a trade of around £115 billion. And when it comes to the actual cars themselves, what's actually being made, there are around 25 manufacturers in the UK that have plants. Now, these are not only just British car brands such as Jaguar and Land Rover and Rolls-Royce and Bentley, but also a lot of foreign ones as well. A lot of German car manufacturers come here to do their stuff. Same with Japan as well. Of course, they drive on the left, so that does help things as well. And they account for around 70 car models in 2023. And it's not just that as well, it's also parts, components as well, 2,500 of those in the UK in total, which is massive, and some of the most skilled engineers in the world. It's no coincidence that for the Formula One teams, for the most part, 7 out of the 10 Formula One teams are based in the UK. It's not a coincidence. We're very good at manufacturing at the end of the day. Last year, there were 900,000 cars, 120,000 commercial vehicles, and in total over 1.6 million engines built in the United Kingdom. And 8 out of 10 cars produced in the UK is actually exported overseas. Again, massive in terms of generating cash from other parts of the world, really, just from exporting. So in terms of what was the case last year and what is mostly the case this year, the UK has a massive manufacturing sector when it comes to cars. But there is a caveat, and this is what I wanted to talk about, and this is why I wanted to talk about it. I've seen this question pop up a lot, but I didn't really want to go into it because I just thought, well, I'm just going to be going over the same stuff that everybody knows, really. Just saying, well, the myth is actually not true in terms of manufacturing. But there have been developments in the UK recently, and it's really come to a head. I mean, we've had, what is it now? We've had Nissan's plant down in Luton. They're on about closing. The next year, they're going to consolidate their resources further up north. And a lot of places are on about either downsizing or getting massive fines. And you know what I'm going to mention? It's the zero emissions vehicle mandate, the ZEV mandate. Now, again, just to go over what a lot of people should know. A lot of people are blaming the current government for this. It is not their fault. This is the fault of the previous government. This was regulations that was put in. So for those that don't know what the ZEV mandate is, I've explained this a lot, but I'll do so again for those that haven't watched my previous videos on it. Basically, zero emission vehicles, i.e. for the most part, electric vehicles, they have to make up a certain percentage of what manufacturers are making, whether it's regular passenger vehicles, regular cars, whether it's vans, whether it's trucks. There's all these regulations when it comes to how much a percentage of the cars that you're making are zero emission vehicles, ZEV vehicles. Now, unfortunately, because of a lot of different factors that I don't really want to get into because it'd take too long, the demand for electric vehicles right now in the UK is a lot less than what was forecast. And this is despite a lot of manufacturers actually putting unsustainable incentives upon their cars to the point where they're probably losing money on them. People cannot buy them fast enough to keep up with what was the forecasted mandate. Each year that we get closer to 2030, which is the net zero by that point? No, that's 2040 net zero. But in terms of actually not selling any more petrol and diesel cars, that can't happen after 2030 according to the regulations that were put in by the previous government. Now, of course, like I said, the demand for cars has not been as high as expected. So going forwards, the percentage that the manufacturers are actually making electric vehicles will not be as high as what was forecast. For not meeting those quotas, the car manufacturers actually get massive fines. I think it's something crazy like £12,000 per vehicle that they are under what they should be doing. So in terms of that, we are seeing some really nasty side effects of it. And of course, I'm sure some people will say, well, this is just car manufacturers being greedy. And maybe there's a bit of that for sure. But at the end of the day, if you're not producing an environment for these car manufacturers to go out and make cars and make money, and there's a better environment for them to do that in another country, they will leave. They will leave, especially if they are foreign car manufacturers, because that is what's in their interest. And it's fair enough, really, from their point of view. I see no problem with them doing that, but it's going to cost a lot of people a lot of jobs, and that is the real tragedy of all this. Forget the shareholders and all that. They're multi-millionaires for the most part. We don't care about them. Who we care about, though, are the people on the ground who are actually, they're working every day, 9 to 5, probably longer in a lot of cases, just to put food on the table. Those are the people that are suffering. And I'm sure some people say, well, they can just relocate. There's not going to be as many jobs. And even if they could relocate, some people can't. What if they've got a family? What if their partner or their wife or their husband or whatever has to get another job just to survive? They're not just going to up sticks and leave. It's not as simple for them. So in my opinion right now, the UK car manufacturers industry is actually in a bit of trouble, and it needs help from this current government to actually remedy it, basically, to change the forecast and change the regulations of this, because at the end of the day, extenuating circumstances from outside of the UK's control and possibly a bit of not the best kind of forecasting has conspired to mean that unfortunately these car manufacturers can't make enough electric vehicles, and they'll get fined and they'll lose a lot of money. And to actually make them is even worse in a sense, because they're just going to be sitting around, no one wants to buy them. So those regulations have to change. The current government can and should do something about it. Lower the amount of percentages for the actual EVs for these years, and don't fine the manufacturers, because if you do, then they will leave. This will happen. It's inevitable. Why wouldn't they? Why would they stay somewhere that is absolutely costing them millions in revenue from fines? It just doesn't make business sense, and they'll go. But that's my opinion, guys. Right now, the UK manufacturing industry, when it comes to cars, is in a very, very precarious position. It is at a crossroads. We either go deeper into this ZEV mandate, this electric vehicle kind of obsession that we have at the moment, to the point where it's detrimental to the car industry as a whole, and it just goes into a really bad place at that point. Or we admit we've made a mistake, they happen, and just go back and say, you know what, let's lower these percentages, let's make them more realistic, and then go from there. That would be the sensible option, in my opinion. Will we do it? Who knows? But if we don't, the consequences could and probably will be disastrous. But that's my take on it, guys. That's my 10 minutes here on the motoringchronicle.com, going over whether the UK's manufacturing industry when it comes to cars is in trouble or not. What's your take, though? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed to the motoringchronicle.com to see much more content just like this on the world of motoring. Have a good one, guys. See you soon.